Hello everyone, my name is Dana Hobday, and this is my debate for POS160 on reasons the US should not be involved militarily in the Middle East. So that is the position I will be taking, and I feel like there's a lot of reasons why the United States shouldn't be involved militarily in the Middle East, but I'm really going to focus on one or two main concepts, and because I know there's a lot of people doing this debate, so there will be some kind of difference. The first stance that I want to take is that war is often used as a crisis to further political gain and motives. So one example we see of this is after the 9/11 attacks, you have the Patriot Acts created, and while these were justified shortly after the attacks, the government exploited them, and it was not until whistleblower Edward Snowden came out that we find out that the government exploited this opportunity because of the crisis, and they were attacking American citizens' civil liberties and their right to privacy. So this is one of the more modern day examples that we can take, where we see rather than using war and military action as a means to protect us, it becomes and transforms this way of undermining our civil liberties, and this war and military action kind of blurs the lines of morality. Unfortunately, this is also not a modern day concept. While that is a recent example, we also have the Alien and Sedition Acts that were passed in 1798, and they were in response to an undeclared naval war with France. And the Sedition Act allowed restriction and actually prosecution of speech that criticized and spoke out against the government, which is just another example of how they used the crises of this naval war with France to undermine and restrict the right to free speech. So through these examples, we can see how the government has used crises to disregard its own people, their basic civil liberties, and it also ties into the next point that I want to focus on, which is that besides that, most of these military conflicts are not even constitutional, and they should not be happening due to the fact that they aren't constitutional. They haven't been passed through Congress in the ways that the Constitution lays out. So Congress has actually not declared war officially since World War II, and some undeclared wars that might be familiar to any of you are the wars in Iraq, the war on terrorism that we're currently fighting in the Middle East, the Persian Gulf War, and the Vietnam War. And so this is something that crosses all party lines. During all of these wars, the timeline, there were a range of people in power who were either Democrats, liberals, conservative, whatever it may be, and it still follows this idea that they didn't go through the necessary channels to declare war. So one of the reasons I bring this up is because if there is such a dire need for the United States to be involved militarily in the United States, there is absolutely no reason why American policymakers who reside in the Senate and the House of Reps can't work together to pass some kind of declaration of war and use the proper channels that are laid out in the Constitution. And this is important because if the United States does not follow its own highest form of law, being the Constitution, how can we expect other democracies around the world to do the same? So there's a lot of different routes you can take with this argument, but I wanted to leave off my argument by reciting something that was said by former Senator Ron Paul in a speech given to the U.S. House of Representatives in February 12, 2009, and he remastered a speech by Rudyard Kipling called What If, and he tailors it to foreign policy, and I think it's a really good idea, and I just want to leave it with all of you and think about it critically, the questions that he asks. So it says, what if our foreign policy of the past century is deeply flawed and has not served our national security interest? What if we wake up one day and realize that the terrorist threat is a predictable consequence of our meddling in the affairs of others and has nothing to do with us being free and prosperous? What if the propping up of repressive regimes in the Middle East endangers both the United States and Israel? What if occupying countries like Iraq and Afghanistan and bombing Pakistan is directly related to the hatred directed towards us? What if someday it dawns on us that losing 5,000 American military personnel in the Middle East since 9/11 is not a fair trade-off for the loss of nearly 3,000 American citizens, no matter how many Iraqi, Pakistani, and Afghan people are killed or displaced? What if we finally decide that torture, and even called enhanced interrogation technique, is self-destructive and produces no useful information, and that contracting it out to a third world nation is just as evil? What if it is finally realized that war and military spending is always destructive to the economy? What if all wartime spending is paid through by the deceitful and evil process of inflating and borrowing? What if we finally see the wartime conditions always undermine personal liberty? What if conservatives who preach small government wake up and realize that our interventionist foreign policy provides the greatest incentive to expand the government? What if conservatives understood once again that their only logical position is to reject a military intervention and managing an empire throughout the world? What if the American people woke up and understood that the official reasons for going to war are almost always based on lies and promoted by war propaganda in order to serve special interests? What if we as a nation came to realize that the quest for empire eventually destroys all great nations? What if Obama has no intention of leaving Iran? What if a military draft is being planned for the wars that will spread if our foreign policy is not changed? What if the American people learn the truth, that our foreign policy has nothing to do with national security and it never changes from one administration to the next? What if war and preparation for war is a racket serving the special interest? What if President Obama is completely wrong about Afghanistan and it turns out worse than Iraq and Vietnam put together? What if Christianity actually teaches peace and not preventative wars of aggression? What if diplomacy is found to be superior to bombs and bribes in protecting America? What happens if my concerns are completely unfounded? Nothing. But what happens if my concerns are justified and ignored? Nothing good. So thank you for listening to my side of the argument. I can't wait to hear everyone else's responses as well.